Grief is such an overpowering emotion, especially after losing someone so close to you. It can take months, years, even decades to get back to normal, if that's even possible after experiencing a significant loss. This podcast was created to help you move through and release the emotions, allowing you to heal the hurt and begin living again. Listen in as I chat with medical professionals, grief workers, and people who have first-hand experience in losing a loved one, what their experience has been, and what they did to help heal themselves and those around them. Life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, but I believe there is always a silver lining if you're willing to look. Welcome to the Release Podcast. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Release Grief Podcast. Today I'm here with the beautiful Kerry Kott, and I'm going to read from my notes that I just, took down. So Kerry came on here. Now, I totally stalked her Facebook page or her socials. Maybe it was Instagram. I'm not really sure which one now. But she's very interesting. And I absolutely loved the vibe that she was putting off. So I asked her and put it out there to ask her to be on my podcast because what she does, I'm assuming, pulls in a lot of grief for her choices of the things that she does in her world. And just speaking with her briefly at the beginning, she has confirmed that yes, it does. But she is a facilitator, a wild woman facilitator. She is also a physician of Oriental medicine and a plant communicator. Now that one is extremely piques my interest because me and plants are like besties. So she's also on here talking about unprocessed grief. Now, a lot of people have no clue what the hell unprocessed grief is because first you have to recognize you have it before you can process it. So that one there, I'm excited to dive into that one. And then she specifically mentioned the choices that she has made while she's been going through trauma and grief. And so maybe those choices don't necessarily align with who she is at this stage of her life. And that is fascinating because a lot of people think that, well, anyway, I'm getting way ahead of myself. So if you want to know more, go to kerrykott.com, KERYKOTT.com to get on her socials and follow her, all the things. But Kerry, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you, Faye. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me here and for us to dive into this juicy conversation. And I can feel some things right at the surface for me. And like, it feels like, wow, this is going to be really healing.
Well, so here's hoping. I mean, I always hope that everything is healing because otherwise I just don't have a podcast anymore.
I can feel it. It's there.
Well, perfect. So I alluded to your socials. You just got done not that long ago of having a retreat. Like, I'm going to dive straight in. I don't like to bullshit or monkey foot around. Dive in. You're a facilitator, a wild woman facilitator. What does that mean? What does that mean? Explain that to me.
Yes, I would love to. I love diving in. Juicy. So I did just have a retreat in Florida. It was a blood reclaiming ceremony. And I share the medicine of nudity and nature. And I specifically hold experiences for women to come into that space. So wild woman facilitator is some words put together to kind of help communicate what I'm doing and what I'm sharing, the medicine that I'm sharing. It's really a space of being a guide and creating spaces for women to come together in a really vulnerable state so that they can receive the healing that they need. And I didn't go looking for it in this specific way that it's happening. Like wasn't like, oh my gosh, I need to go share this medicine of nudity and getting naked and being outside. It was something that I was called to. And in the midst of me searching in my heart, like this just one day like came in and was like, oh, it was like spirit came in and was like, hey, this, and it like came together to share this medicine in this way. So wild woman, to me, being a wild woman is really being connected to whoever you are in all the textures. So Wild Woman isn't just like this savage, naked in the woods and like fierce. A wild
Right.
woman is also like tender and soft and vulnerable and quiet. And it's like all the textures of who we can be as women and as human beings. So that's really what like Wild Woman facilitator is, having a space, facilitating a space that these women come into, and that they can unravel what they need to in the container. And I'm guiding this space, but also in the trusting and knowing that they're going to get exactly what they need, and that these things are created in this space to help them shed and unravel. And yes, there's an actual physical shedding because our clothes are carrying
Right.
things, and like literally the parts of our body that we're required. Those were air quotes. So if you're listening, you can't hear them.
Hence the air. No, I'm just kidding.
Like we're required to cover up the parts of ourselves that we give life from, these
Yeah.
really vulnerable places, and places that are shamed. And like so much that like if you were to expose this part of your body, you could like be imprisoned, be fined. Um, and so like there's a lot of energy being held, I mean, held in our bodies and in these parts of our bodies where it's like it's not okay to show
Right.
this part of ourselves, but also this like it's not safe. Like if you open up this part of yourself, like you're really vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so we come together in this container and we actually open these parts of ourselves physically as well as emotionally. Um, and then there's all these other aspects of it that I feel like I could keep going.
I really love that because just I'm gonna break it down piece by piece. So you're talking nudity. Women are extremely uncomfortable being nude, um, because society has told us that we are not right, that something about us needs to be changed or fixed, or is it's out of season, whatever the case may be. So what kind of a hurdle is that for women coming in?
Yeah, well, it's a really real hurdle.
Mhm.
And even as someone who's sharing this medicine, I go through my own layers of that as well. There's like, so it is something that shows up for the women that come. And then I I don't really find that that's necessarily the thing that I want to say stops the women from coming.
Mhm.
But what I just realized is it doesn't stop the women who have come from coming. It
Right.
is definitely something that shows up, and it's typically a I do not feel very secure or good about how I look, so I'm not ready for this,
Right.
because it's about appearances and about how they look. So that's a very real hurdle, and that is what it's ingrained in us, right? You know, like
Hmm.
that's very super present. So when then they're presented with this thing of being naked, it's like, oh, I can never do that.
Right.
Or like, ooh, there's like some, they don't even necessarily have to say the words, like I'm just
Mhm.
present, I know what it, I get it. And there's like this resistance or this look on their face or this tone in their voice that's like, I don't, I like, that feels really uncomfortable to be with.
Right.
But that's exactly what the medicine is there for,
Yeah.
because then we do actually get naked. There's like this relief. Like there's this layer that literally gets removed, and it's like as if we get to come into an even field with each other.
Right.
And and also come to discover and find the parts of ourselves that are beautiful. But it's very, very much so real part of the hurdle, resistance,
Mhm.
comfortability, um of getting
I,
naked.
I can imagine so. Just hearing like nudist colonies, like I just found out this summer that there was I forgot how they worded it, but the gist was a nudist car, like we have Back to the 50s here. It's a huge event in Minnesota. And all of these people, like tens of thousands of cars are there. And so there's literally hundreds of thousands of people that go through this car show. And they had one that was nude in Wisconsin. They had a nudist car show. And I'm like, we were all like, maybe we should go. This would be kind of fun. Like, let's go check it out. So it definitely piques interest. But then, of course, you go there and you're like, well, I don't want to be the one that's nude. I don't want to do all this. And then you start like talking yourself out of everything because society tells you that it's wrong. And so there it's like, I'm fascinated with this and how like the women that come in the sense of like, so what are the steps like coming into your container, as you call it? What are some of the emotions, some of the stressors like that are relieved when they come after they've been there, like when they're leaving? What are some of the responses that they have?
Mm, yeah, there's a lot that you shared in that. And so connecting with the question about like what are some of the responses, the one of the things that stands out the most is about how relaxed they are in their body.
That's a
Like
good one.
their nervous system is relaxed, how they feel nourished. Like nourished is a word because we're out in nature as well. So we're in an environment where we're safe, we're uninterrupted, we have privacy. And then we're also surrounded by wild aspects of nature, which is
Right.
really important versus this is just a groom manicured environment. Like there's access and an environment of nature where she flourishes on her own. So there's a different energy that is encapsulated in that. And the feedback that I've received from women is specifically how they feel nourished
Okay.
through that. And one of the women at one of my recent retreats had talked about how she wasn't as hungry, but felt nourished in the food she did eat, but also in like being exposed to sunlight and being in the natural environment. But also, we were touching, like hugging, non sexual touch,
Yeah.
and doing all the other things that we were doing. So there's like this release of a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like a grounding, a settling. So like that's the thing that's popping in the most here is how it settles. Like it's how it's a settling energy and women depart with more of this connectedness, this I want to kind of say like rooted and grounded and they sound really good, but it's a settled. There's an
Yeah.
aspect of being settled and maybe peace, a more of an inner peace and clarity. And I feel like that's like the juiciest.
Yeah,
Like,
it sounds like they're settled, they're sinking into who they are and who they choose to become, as
yeah.
opposed to what society has thrust upon them and forcing them to be. And so that is absolutely fascinating to me. I love it. I love all of it. I think as women, when we can sink into who we are and more and more and more, like deeper and deeper into who we are as a human, not just who we are as a mom or who we are as a wife or who we are as a business owner, but who we are as a human, because that removes extra barriers as well. Instead of just, I'm identifying as this or that or whatever, because once you identify as something, then you now have all of these layers that are put upon you, whether from yourself or from others. And so that sounds absolutely beautiful. I go in my garden all the time because of the healing effects of it. Barefoot, I'm always touching the plants. I'll walk by a live plant and I'm always just touching and feeling it as I go. Like they bring me life, like all my plants do. And Talk to me about the grief that you have felt, the grief that has been thrust upon you beginning this journey as you're going into it. Now, I know I mentioned earlier, like the unprocessed grief, which everyone has it, everyone processes through it, but everyone does it at different levels, intervals, fast or slow or whatever, we're all doing it at all the time. But talk to me about like coming into this, because this is so out of the ordinary. Most people aren't doing this. At least not a blood reclaiming ceremony. I've never heard of one. And yes. So talk to me about the grief and stuff that came with that, because like I can just imagine like all these different things, but talk to me about it. Tell me.
Yeah. So the thing that's popping in for me about that is really grief of having not embodied and expressed myself. Like that's what's showing up for me. It's which I feel like is what I'm getting from you in that question. It's just my way of translating it as is like there have been decades of unexpressed aspects of who I am, like the parts that would be dubbed wiggy, weird, woo woo, odd, different, like whatever the label is. And this, and also what I discover happens is when I step into something like a blood reclaiming ceremony, like even using the words and really going into that,
Yeah.
and being like, this is my jam. Like, this is what I feel like is like ingrained in my DNA as a human being. And there's a very specific visual I get with like the work that I'm doing. And it's just this really earthy, connected to the earth, the sky, the trees, the plants, the water, the community of people, and where we're like one with the earth. Like that is what this is about. Blood reclaiming specifically being about like reclaiming that energy as a woman. So just to kind of add some clarity in there. And also in that ceremony, we talked about like what was our first bleed like and how did that impact everything to where we are right now and what is still hanging out there that's unprocessed. And hey, by the way, our cycle is a monthly cycle, and our energies ebbs and flow in a slower cycle. So anyway, it's like this grief of becoming an awakening, but then like the grief part, can feel it, is like the aspects that get shed along the way for like not having used my voice, for like hiding this part of myself, for being afraid. Really, there's a lot of grief. I can feel it right now. Like there's just been a lot of grief about like being afraid to like be the expression and communicate, use words that I want to use, talk in the way that feels good for me to talk, not engage. Like, yeah, I facilitate a blood reclaiming ceremony and we get naked, and the grief and the decades, because I have decades now. Decades
Yes.
of the decades of carrying some other expectation and context of who the fuck I was supposed to be. And there's always been me that's been present. It's just like how much.
Right.
And it's like I think a part of the grief too is actually like letting go of the things that have been stuck and programmed, or stories that I've been carrying, that I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to do it this way. It's supposed to look like this.
Yes. I
Fuck.
agree. That's a lot. That's a lot, because from a child, we are conditioned, don't go here, stay away from there, don't touch this, and all those things we we hold on to them so that we become this perfect child, this perfect being, so that we don't upset or annoy or, and depending upon the childhood, some are better than others, but, we don't come out of childhood without trauma. We all have trauma coming from childhood, no matter what it is. And processing that, and I like to think that, or say, I shouldn't say think, but I like to say that trauma is layers and layers and layers. And it's like an onion, you're peeling it back and peeling it back and peeling it back. And the shedding of the lining of the blood ceremony, like I've really started to dive into the spiritual world. And that is what helped me after I lost my daughter in 2016. That was what helped me the most, was the spiritual aspect of, that we're all connected. Like Mother Earth, when she pops up a tree, those roots that are down below are still connected to all the flowers. They're connected to all the rocks, all the rivers, all the oceans, the plant life that comes up everywhere and anywhere. It's all connected, above ground and below ground. And so I've really been stepping into that, even though we pass and death is a real part of life, we don't get out of life without death. And that's from the moment we're born, that clock starts ticking and we have a finite amount of time. And so it really fascinates me that you're dipping into this now and coming up with this now and diving into this now, with the same vein of like, the clock is ticking. I have no more time. I want to start now. My voice is here. This is where I want to go. I'm tired of being shackled to, things that do not serve me anymore. And I'm going to bring women along for the ride. That is what I'm getting out of all of your stuff.
Damn, that's good.
So that is, but yeah, so with the grief, like, it's also fascinating that I have not had a menstrual cycle since, it's been 17 years now. Because did a complete and total hysterectomy on me when I was 29. And that automatically threw me into menopause automatically. And so at the age of 29, my body was not ready for menopause. And so I had to learn how to do a lot of things. And it's taken me on one hell of a fucking ride. I'll tell you that much. But I'm learning so much as well. So the ladies that come there, are they all younger women? Like, it's a blood reclaiming ceremony, but do you have to be menstruating to be able to go there? Do you have to, like, I just have so many questions. Like, I am fascinated by this blood reclaiming ceremony. I just think of like the women way back in the day, like the warrior women, and they were so in tune with each other and with their surroundings that they could command like the nature to bring up and protect them, as well as fall away and let them feel the sunlight and the moonlight upon their skin. Like, this is what I think and what I imagine. Maybe it's just the writer in me, I don't know, but
Yeah. That's the jam, Faith. Like, that's the vision. That's the feeling that I was like, that's what I feel so like is in my DNA. Like,
okay.
that energy, that aspect of being in community and connected. And to answer your question, you do not need to be bleeding in order to come, because it's not about, like, that energy is still within you.
Yeah.
And you're still in that cycle. Like, you're still in this container, you're still a woman. So whether you're currently bleeding or not, or even if you haven't bled, we've had young women come with their mothers, we've had infants come, women who are breastfeeding come and bring their babies. Like, it's really a space to commune and community, and you do not need to be currently bleeding. So, and I've had women who no longer bleed come because the energy that we carry that is unresolved is still with us. And whether you have your physical organs or not, like, you still have the spirit, the energy of those organs. They're still a part of you. And even when I was in Chinese medicine school, like, regardless, like somebody had their gallbladder removed, they still have a phantom gallbladder. They still have the essence and the energy and the function of that organ as well. And also, as I shared, like the connection with the parts that are unhealed, like they still deserve healing. So, and also a blood ceremony is only, it's a type of ceremony also that I do.
Okay.
So there are other um retreats and different focuses that I do as well. Like I've done yoni ceremonies where we specifically do a lot of different yoni practices. So yoni being the
What is
Sanskrit.
yoni?
I
Okay.
was getting, yeah.
I'm
Yoni
like,
being
what is that? I need to know.
exactly. So yoni is a Sanskrit word for all your reproductive organs, your
Okay.
uterus, ovaries, vagina. It's a way of saying like the English word. I think that would most encapsulate it would be like pussy as a whole.
Okay.
So it's a way to connect to all of that. So we do practices, yoni practices. So like
Okay.
yoni sunning. So basically you open your vagina to the sun to connect to the energy of the sun and allow that to come in and enter. And then there's like, this portal and also an invitation. Like you get to invite the sun to come in. You get to
Right.
open, which is vulnerable to begin with.
Yeah.
Like you're open up your legs and also allow this energy to come in. But it's important that it's an invitation from the person themselves. Like just because we're
Right.
doing a practice in a retreat or a ceremony doesn't mean like you have to do it. Like
Right.
you get to
Okay.
use your voice, it's choice. Yes, you've agreed to come in and participate. And also like each individual person gets to have their boundaries along the way and they get to use their voice. So it's all about like, what is the medicine that they need? Like, this is too much for me right now, or a little bit less of this for me. But you open yourself to the sun. So, like, there's this energy, and the sun being a more masculine energy, it's more yang energy, it's warm, it's hot. Which is the opposite of this entry part of our physical body, which is very dark and moist and soft.
Mhm.
And so it can be really healing physically, emotionally, energetically. So there's like different practices that we do and different
Mhm.
focuses, and a lot of the focus can just be like the conversation of focus. So like the blood reclaiming ceremony and retreat being a lot about like our cycles and bringing in that conversation and what was our first bleed like and talking about the different phases, experiencing the different phases of our cycles and connecting on those pieces of like, hey, like this happened, like I had this part of my body removed, and like you get to bring that in. And it doesn't mean that those conversations aren't integrated into other types of retreats. It's just that I actually find that if I'm more specific about the
Right.
event, it's super helpful. Like
Yeah.
it's
Marketing
so
101.
it's like marketing 101. And
Yeah.
actually when I am more specific and have like this more poignant focus, like it's easier for the women to register and to come and to connect, and like we have a place to focus. Like this is a center point. And there are a lot of things that happen in the midst of that in different medicines that we integrate. And by medicines, I literally mean anything is a medicine, like sitting in the silence, having a space to share, which is this is super important, where you don't get any feedback, opinions, or thoughts or nothing. You just get to share and be seen and heard, and then it gets to actually be released. Like there's no perspectives, no reflections. Like you can just let it go. Which I think is really important about grief, because there's so much of our brain that's trying to make sense of everything.
Mhm.
And even when I felt connected to having this conversation, I felt really connected to the grief that isn't from like, here's a loss. Okay, I'm grieving. But it's the grief that comes from all the moments that we had losses, that we didn't feel safe. We didn't think it was okay to like be sad or to be angry, like, you know? And so, like, that is so important to have a space where it's like, man, I just feel really sad today. And I don't understand it. Or like, I just need to share this thing out. And when we don't have somebody else's opinions about it coming in, or even their reflections,
Mhm.
it's like we get to just have the experience that we need. The grief is, I think like grief is complex. Like it occurs very complex. I
Mhm.
think it's actually very simple. Like it just is what it is in the moment. It's just the human conditioning of, this is okay. This is appropriate at this time. Like I laughed at a funeral once
Mhm.
because I was like uncontrollable laughter. And I was really young. It was a friend of mine who died.
Mhm.
And at the funeral, I was just had this uncontrollable laughter. And I was just like, this part of my brain was like, this isn't okay. And also, what I know now, and what I feel like I knew as that young girl, is that like this was my way of processing. Like there have been times when things have happened with my cousin riding bikes, fall down the hill. He's like scraped up, and I'm just laughing because it's like this moving the energy, like
Yeah.
the stuff. And also, then when I got into Chinese medicine, like the energy of the heart and how the heart processes emotions and energies through laughter.
Yeah.
So it's just like there's all these different ways, and it doesn't have to make sense to the brain, because how many people could have been there thinking she's laughing at a funeral? It's like
Right.
that's how I was able to process that in that moment. And did I really fully do it now that I'm thinking about it? I'm not sure.
Right. Well, and I think that, like you said, grief is like it's super simple and super complex all at the same time. I've said it like I don't know how many times on every podcast. I feel like I've said it. We experience grief from the moment we're born. Like we never stop experiencing grief until the moment we pass. Like we have all of these moments, and it can be with the grief, it comes every day, every moment we experience it. Like, oh my gosh, the sun isn't shining today. Like that's a moment of grief. Like in your mind, you're upset and frustrated because now the sun is not shining. When it's And I loved your analogy of how you were at the funeral and you were laughing uncontrollably, because I think that laughter and tears are the medicine of the soul. And that is how you process. And you can throw in a little rage for good measure, like because sometimes shit just pisses you off and you don't have an explanation for it. And you have all of this emotion that's building up inside of you. Um, and especially after you lose someone, like you have all of this emotion, like, why in the fuck is this happening to me in my world? Why am I now burying my child? Like, this is not how life is supposed to go. This is not. And so you have all of this rage that comes in. And if you're not allowed to push it out, where does it go? In. Yes. And it slowly starts to strangle you and it suffocates you. And I see more and more people as I go through with the spirituality and get further into my spiritual journey. I can see it more and more and more. It's almost like they're beacons to me now. And it I was going to do I think this was going to be this year. I didn't do it, but I wanted to so bad. I wanted to host these like very exclusive get-togethers in different cities and do these wild and crazy things. Like one of them was going to go shark diving. We're going to go in cages, we're going to go in the water, which is like you're hitting a whole bunch of fears. But you're also tapping into a bunch of the grief and stuff that you have, and processing it along the way. Like, okay, why do I have fear of, being underwater? Why do I have a fear of being in a small, like no air area? Why do I have a fear of sharks? Why do I have a fear of being on the ocean? Why do I have a fear of going to this place and doing something that I've never done before? Why do I have, and these are all, and as you experience these fears, they also turn into grief moments, because as each one you don't do, then you have another layer, another layer. And one of them was going to Vegas and going to a smash house to get the rage out, was going out and shooting guns and stuff in the desert, to, flamethrowers and mortars and these high powered rifles, shooting at targets and blowing shit up, because just releasing that energy that no longer serves, and getting it out so that it's not catastrophic at a later point in time, or, breeding disease in your body. So I love that you mentioned that, because it's, sorry, that was a long tangent and way around.
It was beautiful. And I feel like it highlights something too, is that it's okay to get permission to feel what you need to feel. Like, there have been so many experiences that I've gone to collectively where it's like, I know that I'm going with the, like, this is okay, right? And I know these spaces have permission to feel it. So all those examples that you shared are an invitation to process feel what needs to be felt. And there is a difference between environments and experiences that invite you into that versus the ones that are there that also then trigger that. Both can be beautiful, and one is an intentional invitation and a space to help you do that, and I was thinking about how you shared earlier about the car show, the naked car show, and like the stuff that comes up with that, because I thought about how there's a difference between, this is my perspective, there's a difference between coming to one of my women's ceremonies and going to a nude beach. Both can be really healing, and I've done both, and they're going to be healing in different ways.
Okay.
And one is also an intentional space where you're invited. You're invited, and there's also support to help you with the things being processed and felt and purged and released and awakened. And going to a nude beach, like in this example, or like going to the car show, is definitely going to be healing. And also it's just being mindful that things might also need some additional support through that experience. And it's important, so like you sharing about that, it just highlighted that to me. And what came in with that is like the permission. Like, sometimes it's like, even though I inherently know, like, it's really okay for me to feel what I'm feeling, I sometimes need permission. And seeking the permission, and like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. That's why we're here, to help each other. And like, I came from this space, and if, maybe you relate, maybe you're listening and you're like, yeah, that's me, of like, I got to do it on my own. Like, it's not really worth it unless I do it on my own, and I come to it on my own, and which I feel like is a condition of this particular society we live in, where it's like the individual, and like, you're supposed to do it on your own. And, I clearly picked that up along the way. And,
Yes, me too.
Faith raised her hand. And it's just hard, it's hard to carry it all. And it's hard to hold ourselves in our own grief. And that's why other people are so important, people that we have intimately in our lives, environments and spaces that invite us to feel. And that it's like, it's okay, it's welcomed. Yeah, like, you might be screaming and crying and laughing, and like, we're gonna get it, and it's gonna be okay. And then that you can like actually like let yourself go into those nooks and crannies that haven't been touched. And
Yeah.
like you, and then also like you said, like the stack upon the stack. And I love how you brought into the conversation about like, oh, the sun's not shining. There's a grief moment.
Mhm.
Because I hadn't fully even connected all
Oh,
that,
yeah.
but I am aware that like everything adds, but when we don't get to feel grief for that, like where does it go? Like you said, it stays inside. And um I I'm forming a new relationship with anger and rage right now.
Mhm.
And I recently had a rage ceremony, sacred rage ceremony, and I like it's like, wow, rage is my friend. Like
Think so. As a woman, I think and just visually scanning the parameters of society these days, I feel that there is so much rage upon underneath the surface of most every person that you come around and come across, because when someone shows rage, what are they labeled as? A
crazy,
psychopath or crazy or they're gonna hurt
unstable.
somebody, unstable. Like, we give all these labels to things, but yet we don't ever give anyone a way to show that or express that rage in a manner that is conducive to like life, right? I'm a firm believer that we were not gifted with all of these emotions if we were not expected to use them. Like, they have to, and we have ranges on which ones. And so, yeah, I'm definitely one of those women that's feeling the rage, or humans. I shouldn't even say woman, but humans that are feeling this rage. Like, it's bubbling just below the surface. And I can tell that I need to do something. Like, how many times have you went out into the wilds? Maybe you have, I haven't. But I went out into the wild and just released this earth-shattering, gut-wrenching scream that came from the deepest part of your core to release out into the wild. Who does that? Most people don't, because it's frowned upon.
It's frowned
Keep your
upon.
voice down.
It's
Don't talk too loud.
disruptive. Yeah. Don't talk too loud. It's disruptive. It's not okay. It's not appropriate. It's not safe. It's like not all these things. And um, I currently am in this space where I feel like, or I have it, that anger is probably the emotion that is the most repressed. Like you said, like
Mm.
it's like I feel like you were illuminating to that.
Mhm.
And as I forming this new relationship with anger, with rage, um, it's actually been really nice. Like there's something that feels really delightful inside of my chest, like a softness, like a cushiness existing in a way that I haven't felt before. And what um I think because I'm letting out the pressure.
Yeah.
Like, I'm letting
I could
out the,
assume that. Yeah.
and even just saying, I had a conversation with a friend of mine a few days ago, and I said to her, I said, I'm just like fucking pissed about a lot of things. And I I don't know if I've ever said that.
Yeah.
No, like not even
Because
to
you're not supposed to
myself.
be upset with anything.
I know, like, oh my gosh, don't be upset
My
because,
life is perfect and everything goes exactly as I want it to go.
and
Said
that
no one ever.
said no one ever, like, oh, look at what you have. You should be grateful. When it's like, no, I'm fucking pissed. I'm angry. I'm upset. I'm like,
Hold on. You can't, but I want to clarify that, because this is a key point. And I love that you brought that up. You're like, no, I want to be pissed. I'm upset. Life isn't going as I want, but you can still be grateful and you can be pissed at the same time. You can still
yeah,
love your life and love the pieces in your life that you have, spent your entire life building, but being pissed because something is wrong and needs your attention now. Like, that's
yes,
why you're upset, is because something's wrong and needs your attention right now, and you have either one, not focused on it, or two, been shoving it aside, and now it's front and center. But I
Yeah.
just want to point that out because I feel like emotions cloud everything. And so, like, I say my gratitude every day. I am thankful for everything in my world. I'm thankful for everything that I have been taught, even with the loss of my daughter, with the loss of my granddaughter. Like, these, I've learned so many things that I would have never ever known had I not lost them. Do I wish that they were here? 1,000,000,000,000%. But I'm still grateful for the lessons that I learned along the way after they have passed. So I don't want anyone to walk away from this recording, this listening, this viewing, whatever you're doing, with the thought that everybody's life is perfect. Grief is just something that you just work through and it's completely linear, because that is the absolute farthest bullshit I've ever heard. And I will not perpetuate that at all on my channel and I talking anything like that. So anyway, off my stepping stone. I'm off my pinnacle. Like, go ahead. You can finish your thought now.
I have no idea.
If you can remember it.
That was beautiful. And how bringing in that, like, you can still be grateful and have an emotion. Like, that's the thing that's wonky, right? Like, like, you can't be this if you're this, because emotions, you did the wave. There's a hand wave, everybody listening. Emotions, they go up and down, and it's like, here's this emotion, and then here's this. It's the ebb and flow of life. Wave comes in, wave goes out. And so it's not about like cherishing in it, like, oh, I'm not appreciating something because I'm angry. And I love how you brought in that it's alerting. Every emotion alerts us to something. It's our check engine light. That's what I call it. It's the check engine light. So, like, what's happening? It's reflecting something. And I love how you brought that in of like, something needs attention, and like being able to like be with anger and feel the things that I'm now feeling, and just giving myself permission to like be okay to be angry about something is like, oh my gosh, like, I don't even know if I could properly express with words like what that feels like inside of my body and my life. It's like, like, it can deflate. I'm starting to deflate. And as something that anger is showing me is that a place that I've been loosey goosey and like leaky and loose really being the word, is in boundaries. And my anger, what I just recently discovered within the past 2 weeks is that my anger has been here to help me with my boundaries. And when my alerting system, I'm not listening to the dinging of my anger, I'm bypassing my own boundaries, my own needs. And, people pleaser means I'm not secure in my boundaries, over giving in the way of like, oh my gosh, I need to keep giving in order to be loved, and like those things. My anger in the midst of moments like that, of things that I've done that have just bypassed my own regard, like my own care and nourishment and needs, I've been angry about. However, until now, and there have been spouts of like being with anger, but they've come with this this
caution warning. Don't go too far.
Don't go too
Don't
far.
take it too much. Don't get too angry.
Do you have this voice that can understand everything, why it's there? And like, I have it that it's the spiritual hierarchy voice of like, everything happens for a reason and it's purposeful, and I get why I would be angry, and I'm triggered about this. Like, the part of my brain that can make sense of it has inhibited me from, specifically as it relates to anger, actually feel angry actually feel it. Because
Has it inhibited you, or has it been created when you were a little kid? So these are the things I think about, because like we're constantly conditioned as a child to, like when kids get mad, we tell them, well, we don't do that. We don't show, and we continue, bring it in as a child, rather than letting them or showing them, and letting them express their anger in a healthy manner. So as adults, you have all these adults that are filled with rage that have no idea what to do with it. So crimes are being committed. People are getting hurt because we've never let this anger out, this rage, these emotions flow healthily. I will never advocate for violence and stuff like that against another human. But is that also where like we get this negative self-talk?
yeah.
Because we are repressing these emotions, and instead of us saying, I'm sorry, Sally, I can't help you today because I have a date with my bathtub and a good book,
Yum.
Whatever it is, right? That's like my go-to, like whatever it is. But instead we're like, oh, of course. And inside you're like, God dang it, you knew you wanted that bath. That bath was calling your name. That book, you were on chapter 37 and it was just getting good, But instead, you're over helping Sally, do something mundane that you didn't want to do, And so then the self-talk kicks in. So I think a lot of that, the self-talk, is because we're repressing those emotions and stuff as well.
Absolutely.
My thoughts only.
Yeah, I totally see that. Absolutely. Because that voice is there to not actually feel the anger. It's to continue to repress it. It just sounds like a hoity-toity voice. I'm calling it my hoity-toity voice of like spiritual, like, I get it, the all-encompassing. And it's been fun to even like be silly about that voice of like, oh, and I just recently had something come up where I said, we're not doing that right now. Okay. Like to the voice of like, no, you don't. I'm going to feel this. And also what had popped up in the midst of all of this too is like the permission to not even know what to do with it. Like when like my reacquainting scene or forming this relationship with anger in this new way, it doesn't mean that it's like bing bang boom and I'm outside raging.
Right.
Like,
no.
Like sometimes
like a tea kettle, it starts to brew and starts to get warm and the steam starts to rise, and all of a sudden you're like, yep, it's time, I'm gonna blow, and I need to go somewhere else and do it healthily instead of blowing on everyone else around me and causing mass chaos.
Yeah, and even when it's like permission of, okay, I'm going to dedicate this time to be with this, it doesn't mean that it just boom pops out and you're like really feeling it. It's like creating, so like that steam building. It's also about continuously creating those spaces to actually feel it, like to actually feel the grief, like to actually feel those emotions that are there. Like they need space. Like you need space. I need space to actually feel things. If I'm like, okay, I got this on my to-do list and I'm doing this now and I'm doing this now, like there's really no space. Like sometimes it happens and I'm just like, I typically will need to pause whatever I'm doing and just like be with it. And sometimes the grief speaks so loud that I have to actually stop because I haven't created space to feel that. But again, that whole, what you were highlighting about those voices, like we don't do that, and like all that stuff just gets in the way, all of it. And doing what we're supposed to do, like you should be doing something instead of just like over there crying.
Right.
Like, no, actually I need to fucking cry.
Yeah, because that builds too, just like anger. Sometimes it just builds and all of a sudden it's like, boom, now it's going to happen. And there's no stopping it. The tears come, the tears flow. And then when you're done, when you have a good cry, you feel like $1,000,000 afterward because It has purged your soul. Like you're inside, almost like you're shedding ceremony. You have shed all that, whatever was causing you to feel upset, or these emotions that were bubbling around and bouncing around, and they are now gone. And now you get to start fresh.
Yeah, I had that day 3 days ago.
Okay.
Yeah, where it was just this culmination of things, and I could feel it just at the surface, like, because we feel it, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
we know it's there. And I shared a communication with a friend, something that like, it was just something of like, I've been holding on to this thing that I didn't tell you, that I
Yeah.
broke up. I broke up with this partner I had, and we were all friends. I didn't actually tell her, though I knew that she knew because we were all friends.
Right.
And I was like, I've been carrying this around. And so I share this with her, and I'm like having this release, and then there's something else that's bubbling up and surfacing. And I'm like, I miss my ex. Like, I miss this partner that I had. And even though my hoity toity brain of like, well, you're really missing, there's a feeling, there's a connection, and you desire that in your life right now, blah, blah,
Yep.
you know, it was just like, no, I just want to feel the feeling of this,
Mhm.
like feeling loss and grief, even though I know conceptually it's not loss. And so that's the piece about, like, that's the thing about grief, and like this part of the brain that, like, at least I'm speaking to, that's trying to continue to suppress it, and like you're not really supposed to feel what you're feeling. And I was like, no, I just need to feel this sadness. And then I reached out to one of my mentors, and I asked him for help too. And that was just like another layer of like releasing this thing. And then I just stopped and I got on the floor and I just started sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And I was just like, in the midst of it, I'm like, this is so good, but also like feeling it and
Right.
just like wailing. It was like a baby wailing, sitting on the floor, like something happened or the baby was left too long. Like that's what it
Right.
felt like. And I was just wailing and wailing. And then it like, and then more came and more came. And I was like, oh, wow.
You just feel drained, but in a good way.
I really needed that. I really needed that. And it also highlighted to me, like, just that, where that voice is still running the show of like, you can't just feel sad. Like, you shouldn't be missing this person, or that's not what it's really about. It's like, fuck that. Like, I feel sad. And also, I like the part of me that's like, I don't get it. People break up and then like, what, you disappear? What the fuck is that? That was a part that like I got to express and actually feel and be like, this is fucking weird. Hello, hi, person who's been in my life significantly for days and days. And now all of a sudden, like, our relationship changes and like
Mhm.
things are, and I get it. Like, sometimes we need some space before we become friends, and or maybe we never become friends. But I was like, what the fuck is that? Like, just feeling that, like, that's loss. Like, every
It is.
relationship transition, whether we're still in it with the person or whether we've changed our relationship dynamic, like, holy fuck, I'm just getting now, Faith, how much that's grief too, unprocessed. Like, every every
You're
department
welcome
from
for the therapy session today. I'll send you a bill.
these two. Thank you and good day.
Right.
I'm gonna
I will
go
see you next week at the same time.
same channel. Now after this, I'm gonna go take my clothes off and run around naked.
There you go. Get kissed by the sunlight and you'll be fine.
There's no sun here currently.
Oh, well. Okay, get kissed by the cloudiness. Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like everything is it has its moments. Like I said, grief is layers. It's layers and layers and layers. And yes, when you split with someone, when you break up with someone, when you sever connection with someone, you are severing a connection. When they come into you, this is why they call it like don't get in my bubble. I have, 4 feet around you or 2 feet around you, depends on how expansive your bubble is around you. The energies, when they connect and they come in together, they actually influence each other. And then when they separate or sever, they're influencing each other again, because now you are missing that. It's almost like you cut off an arm or whatever, you're missing that piece, and you have to learn to live without that energy again. And a lot of people just don't get that. They don't understand that. They don't think of these things. And it amazes me. But again, this has been my spiritual journey. Welcome to my spiritual journey show. That's what I'm going to rename. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not. But it's funny that everything is grief, and but yet we don't talk about it. We don't put words to these. We don't use our emotions how we're supposed to be using our emotions, and as emotions instead of as of tools of mass destruction, which is what it feels like we're doing, like myself included. Like I'm not immune to any of this. Like I've been conditioned as a child. I've been, as an adult, and I'm in my 40s now. And it's, that's 4 decades of, perpetuation of, being conditioned and having to peel off those that no longer serve me or that I choose not to associate with anymore, or, like,
Yeah.
which is a lot.
Yeah. Just feeling all that.
Yeah, there was a
Yeah.
big one. I mentioned it before. You'll appreciate this with the whole emotions and stuff. Years ago, I had long hair. It would touch the top of my jeans. That's how long my hair was. Long and dark, and it hung. And I would 99.9% wear it up in a bun, right? I felt like I looked like Matilda, the Miss Trunchbull from Matilda, who had her hair pulled severely up in this tiny little bun, and she was mean. She was just mean. That's what I felt like I looked like. And I just got tired one day, and it had been always perpetuated me. My dad always wanted me to have long hair, so I had long hair. My husband wanted me to have long hair, so I had long hair. All of my exes wanted me to have long hair, so I had long hair. I hated long hair. I hate hair on my neck. I don't know what to do with it. It just it's long. It's not me. And so I cut it. I cut it all off, like short. And that was the day that I found myself. That was the day that I stepped into who that I was, because I was no longer wearing my hair for other people. I was actually wearing my hair for myself. And that was when I started showing up online. That was when I started showing up in my business. That's when I started showing up everywhere. And still, my husband does not like my short hair. I mean, he's okay with it now. He doesn't have a choice. But he, lets me have it. Not that he lets me, but he's okay with me having it however I choose, and loves me for it regardless. And so, but it was just funny how it was almost like it instantly snapped into who I was as soon as I cut my hair off.
Yeah.
Because I was shedding one of those layers that did not serve me any well, one of those conditionings. But it doesn't mean I can't ever have long hair again. It just means if I have long hair, it's for me, no one else.
Exactly. Yeah.
So this has been a big emotional roller coaster for me on this episode. I don't think I've went this much on an episode yet. And there's been a few of them that have been pretty like emotional, but this has been really good. Hope the listeners get out of it that they can show their emotions. They can shed the tears. They can go into a rage room. I mean, rage responsibly. Like, let's be adults here.
Yeah.
And just feeling it, connecting with, I think the biggest things for me out of everything that you've said, out of everything that we've talked about, is the fact that you allow women to get in contact with themselves and to choose how they want to show up into the world without the influence and judgment of others. That has been the big thing that has been shining through all of this. And I've said it before, but the more you know yourself, the more you know yourself. Like, if you know how you grieve, and if you know how, like, the things that make you angry, the things that make you unsettled, the things that make you anxious, if you know what those triggers are, then you can avoid them, or you can confront them. I'm always, the obstacle is the way, go through, not around. Like, deal with it head on. And a lot of people will go fear the pain and run toward the pleasure, rather than going through the pain to get to the pleasure. And they're prolonging the pleasure when they run from the pain. And I want to help everyone through this, but obviously it's their own journey and they have to make the choices that are best for them. But I love it that you're helping women sink into who they are, to be able to be more confident in the choices that they are making, as opposed to just constantly running from the pain and heading towards the pleasure, but like actually diving in. This is me. This is where I want to be. This is who I'm choosing to become, and you can't stop me.
Yeah. I feel like you did a beautiful job of reflecting that. And that is totally like my essence. And that's the space that I hold. And I love that you reflected, because it's not about, I don't have a space to tell these women who they need to be or how they need to feel
Right.
it, process it. It's about the invitation in this space that they can discover, feel, illuminate that within themselves. It's whatever choices they need to make for themselves, whatever their voice is. And that is so important. And it's not a space of like, oh, well, how do we go do the thing? It's like, no, how do we go into ourselves so that you have a deeper connection and access to whoever you need to be.
Yes.
Yeah, like I don't know, I think that's an easier job for me. Like I don't want to tell
Right.
you I don't want to tell you who
Like,
you need
I
to
ain't
be,
telling you who you are. You're like, you
what
go figure that
decisions
shit
you
out on
need
your
to
own. I'll
make.
just be here waiting.
Yeah, like no, I want to help. I create the environment that you
No,
get to
I get that.
yeah, like that's my yumminess. And yeah, the thing that's illuminated for me, what I'm left being even more present with, which will also be, integrated into everything in my life, including these spaces with women, is how everything is grief.
Yes.
Like that, for me, having that language, that new connection is just like, I'm really excited about how that's going to then now be gifted to the people in my life, the women that I work with, about how everything is grief. And even just hearing those words, I have it as just like a layer of permission and relief. Oh, oh, okay. And like, yeah, we get to make choices from that and rage responsibly.
Yes. Yes. I could care less about drinking, just rage responsibly.
Rage responsibly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna put that. I'm gonna have to do some merch.
Rage responsibly.
Absolutely. So I am so thankful you came on the podcast today, and recorded with me. I love all the things that you're doing. Keep doing them, dive deeper into it. I think that there's a real need. These ladies need it. These women need it. the female, whatever,
Yeah.
humans.
Yes. This energy.
Me? Well, because there's young women that come in too, and there's babies, and I don't want to just like, I know we say women, but that includes, a certain age range. And so the female, human, I want them to find themselves, to grow out of those or shed those that no longer serve them, those containers that they are placed in, the boxes. So keep doing it. I absolutely love it. And maybe someday I might make it to one. Someday.
The seed has been planted.
Yes. Well, because I'm now on to I'm doing things that are, I have now launched, well, at the time of this recording, I have launched my in-person grief meetup for women only. And I'm focusing on, it is a paid one. It's like $99 a month. And it's a paid one for the simple fact is that we have a ton of free ones around that they can go to for grief. There's a lot of places around. But this one, I want to focus on healing modalities that, I mean, obviously they're going to help with grief, but they're just going to help with so much other stuff within you as well. And so that has been my focus. And this channel is slowly turning into that. I didn't realize what it was when I started it, but I'm trying to give people, maybe they don't want to learn from me, and that's okay. Maybe they want to learn from you on how to tap into and heal the grief that they have, that they're sharing, they're feeling, that's coming up for them. Maybe it's episode number 14. Maybe it's the person from episode number 1. I don't know. But the different healing modalities, because everybody tackles grief, death, loss, life in a completely different manner than someone else. And so I didn't realize that until just now, that that's what my podcast is actually all about. It's grief, but it's also modalities.
Yes, because there's a gazillion ways
There are.
to move that energy. Move that energy.
Right. Rage responsibly.
Yes. And it's just, what are you connected to? What are you called to? Where's your journey at right now? And what are the modalities that are going to
What do you need?
What do you need right now? What's your need right now? What's it look like? And diving into that's beautiful. Thank you for doing that work.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for doing your work.
Oh, I don't like you.
I'm sure I could do that, but I will take my part and do it this way.
Beautiful.
So I appreciate you being on here. Thank you so much. I don't want to take up any more of your time. I've been on here for a while. Any final words for our listeners out there that you want to share?
I feel like we really tapped into it, and more would just be, I feel like, just adding some more words to everything that was already illuminated. So you're doing so good. You're doing so well. And I'm so proud of you of where you're at in your journey. And I'm speaking to you, listener.
Yes, not me, you. No.
Well, I'm also speaking to you, Kate.
No, I got it.
And it's like, I'm so proud of you. You're doing so good. And it's important that you hear that and you acknowledge yourself for that.
Oh, I agree with that. Keep going, keep digging, keep diving, keep being, keep doing all the things to tap into who you are and finding out who you choose to become. Like, that is a vibrant and clear message from this podcast episode. Just keep digging. And thank you so much, Kerry, for being on here with me. And I will drop all the links below the episode. You'll have access to all of that. And don't forget to go to kerrykott.com, KerryKott.com, to learn more about her and get on her socials and get in her presence and all the things. So thanks, guys. Thank you for watching and listening. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this special episode of Release. All the links plus a few extras are posted in the show notes below. And if you think someone you know could benefit by listening to this episode, please share it with them. And as always, keep going, keep being, keep doing. You are amazing.